Are you one of those who live life undaunted? Are you one of those who seek the edge? The edge of their abilities. Where sky is limitless. Waters are restless. The way of living is timeless. This is the way to the playgrounds of Kazakhstan.
Discover Kazakhstan as a new strategic location at the crossroads of Europe and Asia. Develop and grow your business in the leading logistics, trade and business hub. Invest in a country with a great business climate, robust legal system, tax regime and advantageous investment incentives. Employ a well-educated, highly skilled and multilingual workforce. By investing in Kazakhstan, you invest in the largest economy of the region, where the growth and prosperity of your business will always be our key priority. Invest in Kazakhstan. Seize the best opportunities in the heart of Eurasia.
The second day of the U.S. Kazakhstan Trade and Investment Forum. I'm Jennifer Miel of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber's U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council. I want to give a warm welcome to everyone joining us here today from the United States, our friends in Kazakhstan, across Europe, Eurasia, and around the world. We are delighted to join here today to celebrate the milestone of 30 years of commercial diplomacy between the United States and Kazakhstan. This has been a very dynamic forum in our first day yesterday with leading voices in U.S. Kazakhstan relations. The theme of today's conference has been partnerships. We're hearing from partnerships in government and also in the private sector, looking back on the last 30 years, reflecting what works well, and charting and writing the future for the next 30 years. We've heard from distinguished speakers such as the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Kazakhstan, the CEO of Chevron, the Minister of Agriculture, leading voices in private sector and government. And we're delighted to be joined here today by our distinguished speakers from the U.S. Commerce Department and Minister of Justice to kick us off. We'll be discussing sectors that will lead us into this next chapter of growth, such as digitization, energy, and mining, looking at particularly renewable sectors and mining opportunities and partnerships for U.S. and Kazakhstan companies. So we'd like to thank our co-hosts for today's event, KAZAKH INVEST and the Embassy of Kazakhstan in Washington. Also want to thank our sponsors, Atamekin Chamber in Kazakhstan, Coca-Cola Company, and also MasterCard. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Stuart Jones, who is Ambassador title and also from Bechtel. He is the President of International Regions and also Corporate Relations. Ambassador Jones, some of you may know from his distinguished career in government. He had about 3 decades of experience in the State Department, served as ambassador for Iraq, also Jordan, as well as acting Assistant Secretary for Near East Affairs. Ambassador Jones?
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you to the U.S. Chamber's U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council, the Embassy of Kazakhstan in the United States, and KAZAKH INVEST for hosting this forum. Kazakhstan has had a remarkable first 30 years of independence and is on track for another outstanding 3 decades. This success story will continue thanks to leaders like Justice Minister Beketayev, who has been serving his nation with distinction for nearly 2 decades. I'm honored to provide these introductions for the U.S. Chamber's Kazakhstani conversation this morning. At Bechtel, we're very proud of our long history of partnership in Kazakhstan, where we've been an investor and where we've been delivering projects for our customers on a continuous basis since 1993. Bechtel helped develop the Tengiz and Korolev oil fields, built several oil and gas facilities at Tengiz, and constructed artificial islands with associated port facilities in the Caspian Sea off the coast of Baltino. Today, we support Kazakhstan's accelerated focus on carbon reduction initiatives as we move globally towards a carbon neutral future. Through collaboration with our customers focused on carbon emission reductions, we are shaping the future of energy. Kazakhstan, of course, plays an important role in the future direction of the oil and gas industry in support of these carbon reduction innovations. In Kazakhstan, as in other countries worldwide, we will continue collaborating with communities and customers to build a stable, sustainable, and prosperous future. So again, it's my pleasure to introduce the opening speakers during today's program. We have U.S. Commerce Department's Acting Undersecretary Diane Farrell, who will speak to the profession, who will speak to longstanding bonds between the United States and Kazakhstan in an array of sectors, including oil and gas, agriculture, infrastructure, and finance. And we have Kazakhstan's Minister of Justice, Murat Beketayev, who will discuss the business climate in Kazakhstan and advances made in those underway. First, we'll hear from Diane, who has a distinguished public service career with positions at the state, local, and federal government levels, championing economic development and infrastructure. Diane is the former mayor of Westport, Connecticut. She has served at the U.S. Export-Import Bank and U.S. India Business Council prior to the Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. In Diane's current role, she plans, determines, and coordinates policy, directs the International Trade Administration, and oversees the daily operations of the International Trade Administration, which has an annual budget of $483 million with approximately 2,100 trade and investment professionals based in more than 100 cities and 70 markets around the world. So let's start with you, Diane, and thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ambassador Jones. It is wonderful to be here. It's great to see all of my friends at the U.S. Chamber. It's wonderful to be with all of my colleagues with the U.S. Commercial Foreign Service. And I have to say, I'm especially pleased to be participating today, and I really enjoyed those videos at the top of the meeting today, because when I served on the board of directors at the U.S. Export-Import Bank, we did a number of very significant transactions in support of U.S. projects in Kazakhstan. And I think Bechtel, in fact, Mr. Ambassador, was probably one of those. So I feel that this acknowledgement of the 30th year of diplomatic relations is a wonderful place to begin the conversation this morning. And I know that you had very successful interactions yesterday as well. This marks the beginning of a trade and economic relationship, and we know that it is continuing to evolve and grow. Kazakhstan has been and remains an important market and trading partner for the U.S. private sector. Some of the earliest investments back in the 1990s were in the energy sector, in fact, and we've had more recent successes. And I'm really proud of the fact that our former Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, visited the nation, which included and brought what we call a certified trade mission. Again, a true acknowledgement from the very most senior levels of government, the importance of the relationship. We're obviously extremely grateful always to the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council and their predecessor organization. As I think the video really very successfully points out, the location is a central part of East-West transit. And so they really are, the country really is at the center of a very important region that does provide tremendous significance, both from a regional security standpoint, but also an integration, and especially as we talk about some of the areas that we're focusing on right now with the Biden-Harris administration. So we obviously know that we have dealt as a globe, we have dealt with the challenges of the pandemic, the economic impacts and tolls that they have taken. Obviously, the need for our mutual cooperation in terms of assuring the safety and the health of our citizenry. And I think, again, we saw some very good and important announcements come out of the G7 meetings and the most recent NATO meetings as well, when we talk about the United States and its global commitment to strengthening partnerships without conditions, which I think is a very important point to emphasize. So there are a few questions. I mean, again, as we even as a government ourselves take a step back, and forgive me, I was with my grandchildren a few days ago, and they bequeathed me with a cold. But as we step back and we look at the future, and we try to re-envision the future based upon the experiences that we've been through for the last 15 months, and the ability in some cases to perhaps reset or reframe the questions that we ask, there are a few that we should be asking, and some that my colleagues have wanted me to posit to all of you. The first one: how do we best work with our neighbors to ensure goods continue to move swiftly to their destinations? One that clearly is front and center when we talk about the current relationship and current opportunities. Second one is, how do we make sound investments in our infrastructure for future generations and provide our citizens with reliable internet connectivity This is so vital to modern life and to our ability to sustain our economies during public health emergencies. These are two very obvious learnings, but they are great stepping off points for conversation. And again, we talked about partnerships, as Jennifer said at the very top. When we talk about public-private partnerships, those are areas, whether it's public health, whether it's digital connectivity. The next on the list is, of course, climate change and the existential threat. And when I see those absolutely beautiful pictures in the videos, we know that we have, shared interest in terms of ensuring that we preserve natural resources because they're so vital to our economies, to say nothing of the quality of life of our citizens. And we have to talk about internet security. When we talk about a digital world, we know that things are different than where we might have been a few years back. And there are tremendous opportunities where U.S. companies have levels of expertise that can be extraordinarily valuable to our partners overseas. And we want to make sure that we're showcasing those important opportunities. And one thing that I will always say is, as my colleagues who have heard me speak to other groups and organizations globally, U.S. companies, and Bechtel is a great example. We talk about quality all the time. We talk about life cycle cost. We talk about the value of understanding the extraordinary capabilities that U.S. companies provide, the cutting edge and leading technological opportunities that companies provide. So that's one that I always want to underscore. And as the ambassador mentioned, I was a mayor for 8 years. And so I'm very familiar with bidding processes. I'm very familiar with infrastructure projects and financing, especially with my Ex-Im Bank experience. And if there's one thing that I have learned throughout, it's always look for the quality, look for the long-term benefit, not just looking for the short-term, perhaps, lowest cost opportunity to deal with some of these long-term investments like digital infrastructure or physical infrastructure itself. So very important. And I can't say enough about our U.S. companies. A couple of other topics that I'm just going to hit on briefly. Foreign and direct investment. We are really pleased to note and very proud of the fact that U.S. companies continue to be the largest source of private FDI in Kazakhstan. Again, this belies the trust and the commitment that American companies have placed in the Kazakhstan economy and the location as it relates to economic opportunity, job creation, work training, technical assistance. Citizens from both of our countries benefit from our decades-long commercial relationship, and I think we see that as evidenced by our FDI commitments. The second, and this is a program I'm really proud of that not everybody knows about within the Department of Commerce, and yet it is a huge benefit to developing economies, and it's known as SABIT, or Special American Internship Training Program. And the ambassador may be familiar with some of the markets where he had responsibility with SABIT. We've been in Kazakhstan for a long time. 475 Kazakhstani business professionals have actually participated in the SABIT program, and they've been sending delegations to the U.S. or delegations or consultants have been visiting Kazakhstan for 30 years, really since the beginning. They have converted to virtual programming over the last 16 months, obviously because of COVID, and we're really looking forward to when the U.S.-based programs can return following the pandemic. And just as a flag, renewable energy programs will be the focus of the SABIT work in the near term. So for folks who are taking note, please watch and follow. And especially if you have an interest in renewable energy. And obviously this is an area that is a major priority as we look at the current climate crisis for the Biden-Harris administration. Again, I want to thank my friends and colleagues for convening a forum like this. It's absolutely fabulous, and we've all gotten better at these virtual interactions, although we all pine for the time when we can be together in the same place. I know the dialogue has already been important. It will continue to be. I want to thank the Prime Minister's office for taking the time to meet with representatives of AmCham and the other business communities, including the investor council sessions. We've heard from American businesses. These sessions are a vital conduit for an information exchange. We also know that, there are always going to be those issues that we have to address in terms of market challenges, transparency, predictability, consistency, things of that nature. But it's these kinds of dialogues that really help us to bridge some of those gaps of understanding and to give successful examples. And again, thankfully, the U.S. and Kazakhstan have a number of successful examples to cite. I do want to welcome virtually the newly arrived Ambassador Shikbayev to Washington and encourage him, of course, to meet with U.S. companies and in any relationship. As I say, we'll be able to talk those through. I will say to ambassadors, particularly, that at this moment when we're unable to have our senior officials fly to visit with their counterparts during the pandemic, and where we are still quite constrained when we talk about international travel, I believe that ambassadors are taking on an even larger role in terms of having those important interactions with our U.S. government counterparts in Washington, D.C. And so I very much look forward to, Mr. Ambassador, to your active participation and in-person opportunity to meet with our secretary and our senior officials. So finally, I will just say that I want to remind everyone on this call that we have U.S. commercial service representatives at the consulate in Almaty, at our export assistance centers around the U.S., as well as in Washington, D.C., our Office of Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia. And they stand ready, willing, and very eager to work with all of you to help to facilitate and to strengthen what has been duly recognized as a very successful 30-year relationship and collaboration. So with that, Mr. Ambassador, back to you, and thank you one and all. And again, it's wonderful to see you, and I wish everyone the best of luck and very good health. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Undersecretary, for those terrific remarks. It's a great kickoff to today's discussion, and there's a lot for us to take away from there. Thanks also for your kind remarks about Bechtel. Now, we're honored to hear from Kazakhstan's Minister of Justice, Mukhtar Tleuberdi. Minister Beketayev is also a long-serving public servant who has served in various positions in Kazakhstan's government, including its civil service agency, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Prime Ministry. He was appointed Minister of Justice in 2016, and he is leading an open and transparent approach to citizen-engaged government with a focus on reforms. The minister is a graduate of the London School of Economics and Political Science. And Excellency, we're really honored to have you this morning and delighted to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning and greetings from Nur Sultan to all of you. Thank you so much to the U.S. Kazakh Business Council and to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, to our embassy to Washington, and to Kazakh Invest for your hard work in organizing this event and for inviting me to be here today. This trade and investment forum provides a wonderful platform for Kazakhstan to tell its story and to highlight all the efforts we have made today to attract foreign investment and specifically US businesses to Kazakhstan. We have been working hard to ensure that our country has the necessary infrastructure in place to create strong, long-standing bilateral business relationships with our American partners. I'm happy to have the opportunity to share with you some of the reforms we've made and successes we've achieved. Kazakhstan turns 30 years old this year. At the beginning of our independence in 1991, we had GDP per capita of roughly $700 US. Today, that figure is roughly 9,800. Our economy is twice the size of all other Central Asian countries combined. We have worked very hard to establish a strong market-based economy, and we continue to build and improve institutions and policies that attract business enterprises to invest in our country. Before I focus on some of the legal and regulatory steps Kazakhstan has taken to attract US business, let me first address some of the investments we've made in our own people. We made a decision early on that we wanted to ensure that our citizens learn to speak English. Initially, we only required English language training in secondary school. But starting in 2016, we began teaching English in primary school as well. Additionally, in 2017, we also made decision to transition from Cyrillic alphabet to the Latin alphabet, with the goal of completing the transition by 2025. We have invested heavily in our CIS youth workforce. Since 1993, Kazakhstan has offered the Bolashak Scholarship. Bolashak means future in Kazakh. And this scholarship assists college graduates to pursue advanced degrees abroad. Almost 13,000 students have gone through this program. So many of these scholars are now serving in the private sector in Kazakhstan and helping to shape Kazakhstan's business future, which is the whole point of this program. Kazakhstan is a party to more than 200 multilateral treaties and agreements addressing trade, taxation, dispute resolution, labor relations, and intellectual property protection, among others. We joined the World Bank's International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes in 1992 and the New York Convention on the Enforcement of Arbitral Awards in 1995. After 20 years of negotiations, Kazakhstan was admitted to membership in the World Trade Organization in 2015. We participate in many other trade-related treaties and agreements, including patent and trademark agreements administered by the World Intellectual Property Organization. Kazakhstan is also party to more than 50 bilateral investment treaties, including an agreement with the United States in 1992. Another important and exciting step Kazakhstan has taken to attract foreign direct investment is establishment of the Astana International Financial Center in 2018. The center creates new opportunities and incentives for investment in Kazakhstan. The AIFC offers investors the option of separate and independent legal and regulatory framework within which to operate, based on English common law, including its own trial and appellate courts staffed by British judges. Arbitration and mediation are also available through the center, and awards are enforceable in Kazakh courts and international. Already 296 cases have been resolved in the courts of AIFC, along with 438 cases resolved in AIFC arbitration or mediation. Kazakhstan has adopted numerous fundamental reforms to its judicial and legal systems aimed at guaranteeing independent and qualified judges, ensuring the rule of law, increasing accessibility of the courts, and bringing Kazakhstan's courts into line with international standards. In 2016, Kazakhstan reformed its laws governing arbitration, bringing them more fully into line with New York Convention and other international arbitration standards. The new laws clarify that Kazakh courts may review only procedural aspects of arbitrations and may not second-guess the arbitrator's decision on the merits. Due to time constraints, I clearly cannot give you all the details of everything that Kazakhstan has done to create a welcoming environment for the business community. But I believe this gives you a general overview of how committed we are to forging long-lasting partnerships with US companies and business interests. To that point, I'd just like to provide you some statistics that are maintained by the UN Conference on Trade and Development. First of all, arbitration claims against Kazakhstan are very low compared to the amount of foreign and direct investment we have received. From 1993 to 2020, Kazakhstan had inflows of roughly 350 billion of FDI. During that same period, the total sought by some investors through arbitration claims against Kazakhstan amounted to 22.3 billion. Kazakhstan was able to defend its position in most of the cases before independent arbitrators. Where the arbitrators found further investors, we respectfully complied with their awards. As of today, the amount that was awarded and settled equals to 308 million. As I mentioned previously, Kazakhstan joined the World Bank's International Center for Settlement of Investment Disputes in 1992. And since that time, we have been involved in 23 total and 19 reported investor-state arbitration cases. To put this into perspective, within the same time frame, the United States has been involved in 20 cases, Canada 31, Spain 53. While there are 4 cases ongoing, I'd like to provide statistics on the 19 reported cases. Of those cases, Kazakhstan won 10 of the cases, with the claims being dismissed in their entirety. We settled 2 of the cases before determination was made, and investors prevailed in 7 of those cases. With one exception, we either promptly paid the award or we settled during or following the appellate process. I'll note that both the World Bank and ICSID have described these statistics as balanced and in line with expectations. They reinforce the fact that Kazakhstan is an excellent place to make significant capital investments and that the Republic is a reliable investment partner. In the past 30 years, there has only been one case that Kazakhstan has lost and has continued to challenge post-arbitral award. That is because we believed and now have concrete evidence that this arbitration award was procured by fraudulent financial data supplied to third-party auditors. Those auditors have since rescinded their audit reports and notified all the parties that no reliance should be placed on them. Kazakhstan looks forward to having its claims relating to the fraud addressed by a reliable judicial system and will continue to look to the rule of law as its guiding principle in all such situations. So in conclusion, I'd just like to thank you. Thank you for your investment in Kazakhstan, and thank you for recognizing Kazakhstan as a leader in Central Asia. We are committed to continuing down the path that we started just a short 30 years ago, and appreciate your support and feedback as we look forward to the next 30 years of strong bilateral relations with the United States and a strong and prosperous relationships with US businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Beketayev, for your leadership in championing many business reforms in Kazakhstan and also to help with development of human capital in Kazakhstan. Some of these programs that you described sound like very good partnership examples for US and Kazakhstan. We appreciate again your commitment to rule of law and alignment with international norms, especially within WTO, World Bank programs, and also within OECD. So to close out today's session, at the opening, again, we want to thank the minister and also our speaker from the Department of Commerce, who've outlined important details for us to keep in mind today on partnerships, also looking at the future of the next 30 years for growth between US and Kazakhstan, really looking at opportunities where US companies can partner with Kazakhstan companies and bring innovation and ingenuity to build out some of these trade corridors in Central Asia and linking Europe and the Far East. So with that, we'll conclude our closing session, our opening session, and transition to one of the first panels of today, which is on energy and mining. And it will be moderated by International Government Affairs Manager from Chevron, Amy Conroy. And Amy, many of you know well. She has been the day-to-day chair of both the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council and also its predecessor, the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Association. Amy knows Kazakhstan very well, and she will be leading today's panel on energy and mining. Amy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and I hope everyone can hear me. And thank you so much to the Chamber for all of your hard work in putting these sessions together. I'm so pleased to be here today with you all to discuss energy and mining in Kazakhstan, topics that I find not only fascinating, but also quite timely. We have a great panel to hear from today from the Kazakhstani government, the US government, and the private sector, each discussing different and varied topics. But first, I would like to introduce Kazakhstan's Minister of Ecology, Geology, and Natural Resources, Magzum Mirzaghalayev. Mr. Mirzaghalayev was appointed minister in 2019 after serving for 6 years as Vice Minister for Oil and Gas. He has also worked at Kazmunagas, Kazakhstan's national oil and gas company, and has also had an impressive career in the private sector. Minister Mirzaghalayev has degrees from the University of Tehran in international economics and from the Diplomatic Academy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Economics. Minister Mirzaghalayev, thank you so much for joining us today. It's truly a delight to see you here and for you to join us, and we very much look forward to your remarks.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. First of all, I would like to thank organizers for organizing such a nice event. I think it is quite important for us to continue this dialogue on a regular basis, and I would like to deliver very briefly my speech, which is related on our cooperation in green economy and on geological aspects. First of all, I'd like to say that the environmental protection and ecological issues are very important for our country. This year we had adopted a new Eco Code, which was, I think, a very important step in life of our country, and we were able to find a solid balance between the ecology and economy, which is a very important step. And the new environmental code comes into force in July, and I want to say that it was prepared by us based on the OECD countries' experience. I would also like to say that recently I had a very fruitful discussion with His Excellency Mr. John Kerry on combining our efforts and sharing our experience in and joining our efforts in climate change aspects. And we agreed that Kazakhstan should also continue to play the leading role in terms of bringing the regional countries from our region, from Central Asia region, and build the C5+1 platform also on environmental basis too. And we we offered to have a meeting C5+1 sometimes this autumn and inviting ministers of ecology of our region, and including Mr. John Kerry. I would also like to say that we are very much interested in attracting green financing into our economy, and we are keen on working closer with American investors and American companies. A few words on our potential. As you all aware, actually our economic operation was started 28 years ago when Chevron was one of the first large foreign investors who came to Kazakhstan and started developing a huge oil and gas field called Tengiz. But I think that there is a huge potential that exists in cooperation and exploration of rare earth metals. and we are ready to provide American companies the required geological data. We are ready to provide some incentives if needed in order to create this joint business in Kazakhstan. We have mines of lithium, we have copper sandstones containing osmium oxide, we have tantalum containing ores, and we have some deposits with associated niobium. And I think, of course, since this is now the trend worldwide is to move to the electric vehicles, it requires, of course, rare earth metals in order to produce the batteries, etc., etc. And we believe that Kazakhstan should play a larger role in this aspect. And I think Kazakhstan could become a, let's say, hub for American companies in order to expand this to the local, including European markets too. So we, as I said, we are looking for investors, we are looking for partners, and we are ready to provide the required support from our side. So please let us know if you have such an interest, and we as a ministry and we as part of, we as a government will provide all the required support. Thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, thank you so much for your remarks. We really appreciate it. And as a fellow geologist, I very much appreciate your comments. And we know Kazakhstan is very much endowed with incredible natural resources. And so we welcome the opportunity for businesses to connect with your wonderful country. And now I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. Our first will be Deputy Assistant Secretary for the U.S. Department of Energy, Andrea Lockwood. Das Lockwood, the United States has been a partner of Kazakhstan's in the energy space since the two countries established diplomatic ties almost 30 years ago, whether it has been on nuclear security and nuclear energy, oil and gas, renewable energy efficiency, or electric power. Kazakhstan's President Tokayev recently pledged that Kazakhstan would reach carbon neutrality by 2060. How do you see the Department of Energy working collaboratively with Kazakhstan to reach this aim?
Hi, Amy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much to you and to the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council and the Embassy of Kazakhstan for your work on putting this event together. I am very pleased to be part of such a distinguished panel, and I definitely especially want to thank Minister Mirza Galiev for his remarks. Promoting energy sector innovation, economic development opportunities, and supporting our allies and partners as we collectively race to decarbonize our economies drives our international policy, energy policy in the U.S. Kazakhstan shares some of our challenges in moving beyond coal for electricity generation and toward renewable power, clean hydrogen, and greater energy efficiency. DOE is working together with our national labs and with our experts and the technical expertise and know-how that we have within the DOE and lab complex. We'd like to share that with friends like Kazakhstan. We look forward to continuing to look for opportunities to support Kazakhstan with technology and knowledge and share our lessons learned as we go through this energy transition. We're actively involved in what we call the just transition, people-centered transition here in the United States, where we seek to create good-paying jobs for those currently working in coal and other fossil fuel industries as we transition. And I know this is a challenge for Kazakhstan as well. As in past energy and economic transitions, we need to develop new technologies and industries so that new jobs and livelihoods replace those that are lost. United States cannot succeed in this unless Kazakhstan and the rest of the world also succeeds. And we are very well aware that carbon emissions know no borders. So we look forward to ensuring that everyone can foster and adopt emerging technologies rapidly, because without a path forward for the fossil fuel sector workers, this complete transaction will not happen.
Thank you. And for my second question, and to expand it a little bit outward, Das Lockwood, several U.S. government agencies are actively work with Kazakhstan on energy issues. How do you see, and how does the Department of Energy fit into the whole of government approach?
DOE is one of many U.S. government actors in Kazakhstan's energy sector. Each of us is focused on new technologies and meeting our climate change goals, but our efforts are complementary and we work closely together. Certainly USAID is very involved with its Power Central Asia, Power the Future, and Central Asia regional energy market initiatives. And we know that with USAID assistance, Kazakhstan added over 1,000 megawatts of renewable energy projects through competitive actions, resulting in a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Our colleagues at the Commerce Department and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative promote U.S. exports to Kazakhstan and advocate for market reforms. The State Department, as you know well, is actively engaged with Kazakhstan in elevating climate issues as a priority topic for discussion in diplomatic engagements. Mission Kazakhstan has also implemented a number of climate-related public affairs programs, including on air quality and renewable energy awareness. And now, as the minister mentioned, the Office of Special Presidential Envoy for Climate is encouraging greater global ambition to combat climate change, to keep the goal of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees within our reach. On June 9th, the International Energy Agency issued a report on financing clean energy transitions in emerging and developing economies. It shows a role for the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. So working together with all of these agencies, DOE can offer technical support. And beyond these discrete technical support efforts, DOE collaborates with our interagency colleagues to develop and implement broad strategies so that we're all moving in the same direction. Ultimately, solutions to tough challenges like the transition away from coal will require not just a whole of government approach on the U.S. side, but using our private sector colleagues, academic researchers, and non-governmental organizations. That's why it's so important that we ensure not just technical expertise is shared, but legal, regulatory, and policy ideas and frameworks exist and are shared for implementation, so that companies, domestic and international financing options are all available, and workers facing change understand the range of options and are taken care of. For these things to happen at the same time, we recognize we have to work together across USD agencies and internationally.
Thank you, Das Lockwood. That's very heartening, and I'm happy to hear that the U.S. government is very much working hand in hand on its cooperation with Kazakhstan in this very, very critical, important topic. The next speaker I would like to introduce and ask some questions is Mr. Kanat Kudaibergen. He is the chairman of the board of Tauken Samruk. For those of you who don't know, Tauken Samruk is Kazakhstan's vertically integrated national mining company, which extracts gold, copper, lead, zinc deposits with growing prospects in the development of rare earth metals in the rare earths sector. Mr. Kudaibergen, mining and minerals are of growing importance to the energy transition space, and Kazakhstan is greatly endowed, as I said earlier, and most of us know, with abundant mineral resources, including coal, ferrous, and non-ferrous metals. Does TAO Ken Samruk currently cooperate with U.S. companies in the mining sector?
Hello, everybody, dear colleagues. Thanks this organize this cooperating and this meeting. So currently, TAO Ken Samruk has no joint projects with representatives of U.S. companies, but you are actively cooperating with Australian and UK companies like for example, Fortescue Metals Group, Discovery Ventures Kazakhstan. One of our key partners is Glencore from Switzerland in a joint project KAZAKH. KAZAKH is one of the leaders in zinc mining in Kazakhstan, and we are proud to be part of this project. We would gladly start working with American companies.
And what is the framework of TAO Ken Samruk's cooperation with its foreign partners?
As before, our minister mentioned, we are looking for investors that have competitions in mining and exploration and financial capabilities to develop mining project with TAO Ken Samruk mainly. These main preference conditions are considered when TAO Ken Samruk enters in strategic partnership. The most attractive metals in which TAO Ken Samruk is interested in mining are gold, copper, zinc, and lead. There are basic metals. So in addition, we are interested completely in EV materials. The role of TAO Ken Samruk is to be a reliable local partner, which also provides financing and helps partners to develop projects in Kazakhstan. For example, there are expertise in local legislations, GR functions, and doing business conditions, etc. It's a short brief.
No, thank you so much. And just one more further question. As we look to the importance of rare earth minerals in the EV sector, as you mentioned, can you discuss a little bit about Kazakhstan and its mining industry and why Kazakhstan specifically is a great prospect for foreign companies?
So as our speakers mentioned before, Kazakhstan has a significant mineral resource base and a number of world-class deposits in mining sector. So our country has relatively low power costs and skillful labor. Besides that, Kazakhstan has a well-developed infrastructure, which enables to implement projects with comparatively lower capital costs. Geological exploration has not been carried out in Kazakhstan for a long time. For example, from Soviet Union period. Exploration is carried out up to a depth of 200 meters, while recently discovered large deposits in other countries were at a greater depth.
Fascinating. I didn't know that. But I do know that Kazakhstan is an enormous country, I think the 9th largest in the world. And so there's a lot of exploring to do, clearly. Thank you. Thank you so much for discussing the mining sector. We're going to, as I said, we're going to change topics today. And now we're going to discuss Kazakhstan's economy with Chris Wiefer from Macro Advisory. He's the chief executive at Macro Advisory and knows this region very, very well. Chris, Kazakhstan's economy fared relatively well through the pandemic, contracting by only 2.6% in 2020. and is on course for growth between 3.5% and 4% this year. I'm curious as to why you think Kazakhstan achieved this result, and what does this positive picture of these numbers suggest? Oh, I think you might be on mute.
I was about to go rattling off to myself, so sorry. Anyway, thank you, Amy, and good day to everybody. Yes, as you say, a relatively good performance last year, only about 2.5% contraction, which is very good compared to the rest of the world, and on course for a good recovery this year. I think that's partly the economy is kind of, it's a more normal economy, I suppose, really. When you talk about Central Asia, we talk about mining, you kind of almost, the questions we get asked from our clients about where are the problems, capital controls, restrictions, etc. And that's not the case in Kazakhstan. It's a very open economy. There, it's very transparent, and with very, very few restrictions for investors, if any, operating in the economy. Last year's performance came about because the government had very good financial resources in which to draw on. So, they building up the financial reserves and the sovereign wealth fund, it was able to draw down on that money to pay supports for the economy, to provide supports for people and small businesses, but also to keep the economy moving along, and didn't have to kind of resort to the sort of severe lockdowns that we saw perhaps in other economies in Europe and elsewhere. So it had to build up resources, the legacy, I suppose, of kind of strong hydrocarbon flows over the last several years. And this year, the background is, yes, we're obviously seeing a very strong recovery in the oil price, and Kazakhstan is also adding to volumes with the expansion, obviously, in Kashagan some time ago, and coming up, I guess, with the start of expansion in Tengiz. So some kind of higher volume, but the higher price, which means that budget revenues are also a lot better than being expected. And they still have a lot of reserves that they can draw on. So the government is in a good position, therefore, to fund budget spending aimed at maintaining stability, and also aimed at now starting increasingly to kind of move away from a focus on stability, but starting to look at how to use that money to create incentives. So some of those are tax-based. Obviously invest in different projects. Foreign investors can expect to cut tax deals. We're hearing that. They can afford it. Also co-investment from the government, in big projects, whether that's providing maybe better access to projects, better export routes. So, we are seeing the government, put its money where its mouth is, if you like to put it that way. And it is using its financial resources not only to kind of maintain kind of stable economy and to support the people and support businesses, but also now increasingly to help attract foreign investors into different parts of the economy. And of course, resources, extractive industries, still top of that list, but it obviously embraces other areas like agriculture as well. So I think, therefore the outlook looks pretty good. The country has the resources to maintain this level of recovery and to expand on that over the next several years.
Great, thanks, Chris. That's really promising and hopeful. I'm happy to hear it. You mentioned that the government is making these changes to, diversify its economy, and we hear that it's as a central goal of the Kazakhstani government, as it's been very reliant on the hydrocarbon economy for quite a long time. What evidence do you see that investors are responding to the government's kind of drive to diversify, and what are the prospects for increased investment into diversification?
Yeah, look, this is a topic that comes up a lot with resource-rich countries. Every so often, whether it's Russia or other countries in the neighborhood, kind of at some point always talk about how to use their kind of resource wealth to create greater diversification and to sustain that growth. But the pressure is now kind of increasing more at a faster pace than we've seen before, simply because of the move towards climate management, renewable energy, and we can see I guess I don't have to tell Western oil companies the pressure that you guys are under from shareholders, environmental groups, etc., to be doing more about diversification. So the bottom line is that if you're sitting in Nur Sultan or Moscow or Baku, you really have to start much more seriously thinking about, whether this could be the last opportunity to start using resource wealth to create a better platform for long-term growth. In other words, you can't rely on, say, the oil price or oil demand staying forever, regardless of what the scenarios are. So there's a lot more pressure, first of all. The government in Kazakhstan has been talking about diversification for a very long time, and I think certainly has been criticized for doing a lot more talking than actually affecting change. And there's so many kind of 5-year plans or other development plans announced with great fanfare, and yet not a great deal seems to have happened. The emphasis has continued to be on the hydrocarbon sector and on metals and mining and extractive industries. But whether it's different this time around or not, obviously the big change is the change in leadership. President Tokayev coming in, building his new team. I think the changes that we see in society, the greater demands from people in Kazakhstan, for greater wealth distribution, for better job opportunities, for greater income growth, all of these things, plus the background of kind of moving towards the kind of greener energy and perhaps a question mark at least over to sustainability of hydrocarbon as the key driver of the economy. So you can say, therefore, with a little bit more conviction that this time round it does appear different, and there is greater pressure on governments in Kazakhstan, governments like Kazakhstan, to actually get on with it and to start, kind of diversification programs. And I expect that's what will happen. So right now, as I mentioned, we are seeing kind of the emphasis still on extractive industries. And why not? Because that clearly is where the opportunity is. And, if you mention something like the Belt and Road system or the Indian-funded North-South Transport Corridor, Kazakhstan is in a great position to develop these resources and to export them to key markets in the next few years. So quite rightly, therefore, emphasizing this sector and building on that, simply makes sense. But then, the other areas that are target for growth, where the country does have competitive advantage and where it can see growth, agriculture is a clear one. As you mentioned, the 9th biggest country, that's a lot of agricultural land, food processing, but also technology and other related areas. The government has a kind of fairly clear and detailed program. And I think the difference this time, if you like, is that there is now a clock ticking on the hydrocarbon reliance. It's not today or tomorrow, but it's certainly over the next decade. And so therefore, there is this greater pressure for the government to open up and try and attract more investors and to use the resource well to do it. And at the same time, we can certainly see a lot of domestic changes and social changes where people are also expecting that. And I think President Tokayev has recognized this. He's talked about it a lot. And I would expect over the next several years, the economic base will remain very dependent on resources, but we will start to see a lot more diversification, I think, and job creation, and therefore tax generation in other areas. I think Kazakhstan is in a very good position because it's got relatively few legacy problems to hold it back. It's in a good position actually to make that transition. A lot of hydrocarbon countries are looking at Kazakhstan to see what it does next.
Chris, final question, and I'm interested in this because, I come from Chevron and I fundamentally am interested in this topic, and I know a lot of variables go into your response on this, but how urgently do you think that the government of Kazakhstan should be looking at new energy sources? You kind of touched on it, like it doesn't have to be tomorrow, and we have, demand, there's all different projections of demand for oil and gas. But I'm curious as what do you think about how aggressive do they need to be?
Well, as you already said, that really is I don't know what the figure is, the $1 trillion question at least. It is my personal belief that oil producers in places like Kazakhstan, Central Asia, OPEC, have one more enormous party, if you like to put it that way. And it's because, it's clear that the forecasts for the move away from hydrocarbons, the move towards electric transportation, it's happening much more slowly than maybe people had thought about it or environmental groups, had talked about it. It is happening slowly, and you can see that the demand in certainly some of the fast-growing Asian markets, whether it's India when it recovers from COVID or China, is staying very strong. And we see that even today, demand for hydrocarbons in North America is back even ahead of where it was at pre-COVID. So I think on the demand side, therefore, it looks like it's going to kind of peak and decline a lot more slowly than maybe had been expected. But at the same time, as I mentioned, you're seeing a lot of pressure being applied to the big international energy companies. I mean, just recently, of course, the court ruling in the Netherlands against Shell, and the pressure that's been applied, obviously, the board level and Exxon, and obviously BP kind of really leading this in many ways. So bottom line is, it appears as if we're going to see a kind of faster decline in Western sourced oil, in particular oil and gas, but oil in particular, than the demand side, which means that those in the middle, whether it's OPEC or Central Asian or Russian countries, should have a period where their market share will rise quite strongly. So I would think, therefore, that we will at least see $100 oil in the next 6 months. And I would think that we're looking at a period of 3 to 5 years where the oil market will be very good for producers like Kazakhstan. That's the window right there. Obviously, the temptation will be to sit back and, just keep extending one's optimism. I think there's a clear difference this time, in the sense that the world has moved. We are moving towards, greener energy. We are moving towards electrification in transportation, etc. That's inevitable. It's only a question of how quickly and this pace of momentum, but we are doing it. So this is very much the last kind of window, but it could be an extremely profitable window. And I think the more successful countries will be the ones to recognize that and use this, and I would describe it as windfall, use this coming windfall kind of revenues or taxes to accelerate the diversification. So if the Kazakh government asked me today, I'd say there is a sense of urgency. Don't be fooled by the complacency that might come with rising oil prices in the next couple of years. This is the last shot. You really got to use it this time. So there is a sense of urgency, and I think it's over this kind of next 5 to 10 years max, but maybe even 5 or 6, you really have got to make the changes, and that means starting now.
Thanks, Chris. Very much appreciate your thoughtful words. We're going to turn our table again and now head towards the renewable energy sector. I would like to ask a few questions of Ruslan Jemkov, General Director of the Association of Renewable Energy for Kazakhstan. Mr. Jemkov, today a growing component of the energy supply system is renewable energy. What is the role of renewable energy sources in the economic agenda of Kazakhstan?
Thank you, Amy, for this question. I would like to congratulate and to thank the organizers of this forum. At the beginning, I would like to say a special thank you to the U.S. Kazakh Business Council, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Kazakh Embassy in the USA, the national company KAZAKH INVEST for this opportunity. Now, to answer your question, I have to explain a little bit. The main document, the basic document for the renewable energy in country was introduced in 2013. It's called the concept of transition to green energy. So as you know, most of the countries, they are looking for some alternatives of organic fuel, and producing renewable energy is roughly around 15% in several countries. But the concept of transition to green energy in Kazakhstan has set some KPIs, some goals. So we have set a 3% share of renewable energy by 2020, and we have successfully completed it last year. We've set a goal of 10% share of renewable energy in total energy balance by 2030 and 50% by 2050. But you know what's interesting? You were just talking about the sense of urgency with Christopher, and the sense of urgency of transition to some alternative and renewable energy. And I think that our president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, feels this urgency. And very recently, I think it was last week, he has changed one of the KPIs, one of the targets, and he suggested to reach 15% instead of 10% by 2030. So this clearly shows that the renewable energy sector is very important for the country right now. And the sustainable development of the society is important, is on the agenda today.
And Mr. Zhemkov, what is being done in Kazakhstan in terms of stimulating the development of renewable energy sources?
Well, there are a lot of programs and a lot of incentives and tax benefits that you can get. But once again, let me walk you through some historical points. After conducting the Expo 2017, Astana Expo 2017 exhibition, there was an auction system that was introduced in Kazakhstan. It was in 2018. So starting from 2018 and basically in 2019, there was a huge jump. There was a huge progress in integrating and testing renewable energy projects. Why did it happen? The auction system that was introduced by the government allows us to bid in many projects announced by the Ministry of Energy and to start with the feed-in tariff and then bid for the lowest price. And this way, the winner gets a project and he has a guaranteed offtake from the government for 15 years. And he has a lot of other benefits that he can get from the government in terms of tax, land, and access to the grid and things like that. But there is also another set of incentives and benefits that you get from the government, is especially in the for the small and medium sector. So we see some special programs co-funded by DAMU and UNDP, and we see a lot of programs that are opening for people who are trying to do some projects in the field of energy efficiency. So the whole topic is very hot right now, and we have so many programs right now that we're actually waiting for investors, and we're happy and we're proud to show all those programs, and we invite the American companies to participate in all those auctions as well. We have a big interest from the Europeans, like the Germans, the Italians, the Spanish. They are very active in all those auctions and bids. The Russians, obviously, the Kazakhs, but we would like to see more U.S. companies on the market as well.
So you would say that this market, the RES market, is open, relatively open for foreign partners?
Well, it's not relatively open. It is open for foreign companies, and there are no limitations. There are no restrictions for foreign companies to be here. And I personally, as a representative of the Association of Renewable Energy, think that there should be some kind of localization done in the country when the projects are implemented. But today we understand that let's say the Western world and the European world is much more advanced than the local market in terms of technology. So we are open for all advanced companies and progressive companies to come here and to share their experience and to implement those projects. We have all the conditions for that. You just have to come and take the project and work here.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. We're going to now turn to the CEO of NewScale Power, John Hopkins. John, small modular reactors, or SMRs, are designed to offer baseload power that's scalable and has a more simplified design, which reduces production costs and brings other benefits. Could you tell us a little bit, for those of us who don't know about NewScale, about NewScale's SMRs and whether or not they're ready for the market?
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And again, thanks to the Kazakhstan Business Roundtable and the U.S. Chamber. The NewScale actually started 21 years ago when the Department of Energy provided a grant to Oregon State University. And the challenge was is it possible to take a clean sheet of paper and with safety in mind, developed what was known as a small modular light water reactor. They took on that challenge, and where we are today, we're a true public-private partnership. DOE made an award to under the Obama administration to NewScale to help with the assistance of getting through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We were awarded a competitive process, $226 million over 5 years. Today, where are we? 2020 of August last year, we made it through that extremely rigorous NRC process, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We're licensed, we're ready to go. The module itself is a 77 megawatt output electric. Each module is independent of one another. And so many countries we're in discussions with right now, and you can configure these because they're scalable. So you could have a plant with 4 of them, which equates to about 308 megawatts, up to 12 at almost a gigawatt size with 924 megawatts. And the fact that each one is independent of one another, you could have 3 or 4 of these in operation, generating revenue in, let's say, cities of the future, and then you want to add to them, you can do that later. Or if you want to, like a country like Singapore, who's looking for water independence, you could use 3 or 4 modules as it relates to providing electricity, and 2 or 3 modules just providing the energy requirements for reverse osmosis desalination. We're also in the process right now, we put together a multinational consortium for hydrogen production. And that's, we'll be working with INL. I'm not at liberty to announce who those companies are yet, but we will probably hopefully do so in July or August timeframe. We're seeing a lot of, not just NuScale, but the advanced nuclear community in itself. Many of the countries and companies we're talking with now, Amy, have admitted that they cannot reach their decarbonization goals as fast as they like, just on renewables alone. They're looking at advanced nuclear. We have the capacity also to complement renewables in the area of load following. When the wind's not blowing, the sun's not shining, we could help load follow the intermittency of renewables. And we're in discussions with a few companies with that also. To date, we have $1.2 billion US invested in this asset. So we're very close to commercialization. Our first plant is scheduled to be online in 2029, and that's when the customer, it's the Utah Association of Municipal Power, needs the energy. However, with our current supply chain, we could easily be in ground operational by 2027. We have a robust supply chain. We just had 2 Japanese companies invest cash in us, JGC and IHI Manufacturing. A Korean company, Doosan, is assisting us with the modular fabrications. They invested cash. So these are bottom line dollars where these companies are betting the future on us. We have 12 MOUs currently, predominantly in Central and Eastern Europe, and as well as Sub-Saharan Africa. And what they're looking for, these are either at CEO levels or energy minister levels. They're not legally binding, but it shows the interest that they're having in advanced nuclear. So we're keenly interested in working in a country like Kazakhstan. I provided the oversight. We built a U.S. embassy in Astana at the time. So I've been there numerous times, and we think there's a real opportunity here. And Kazakhs, as you know, we as a country buy our uranium in 3 countries: Kazakhstan, Canada, and whom am I forgetting? Kazakhstan. Anyway, so I think there's opportunities there for a fuel source for these numerous advanced reactors going to come out, and perhaps even within Kazakhstan to have an advanced manufacturing facility. We're a technology company. We don't manufacture anything. Thank you.
Thanks. If we could go a little bit further into Kazakhstan, I would appreciate your thoughts on when you look at kind of the energy system in Kazakhstan, what do you see as the main benefit of the SMR application in Kazakhstan?
Probably similar to what we're seeing in this country. We're in discussions right now with companies that are transitioning, let's say, from coal to clean energy. If you look at the module configurations 4, 6, 8, 12, we can go into an existing coal facility. We've done the analysis. Also, many of those people, let's say it's a 400 megawatt coal facility, typically engage about 200 employees. We've already looked at how we can cross-train those individuals into high-paying jobs on a new scale site, where we could also use the existing infrastructure that's already there. And we're currently in discussion with KNPP and Kazatomprom. We have been since 2019. Discussions are progressing well because, again, I think that they see an opportunity here in working with us. So we're looking forward to continuing to work with KNPP and Kazatomprom.
Great, thanks, John. And
Thank you.
as we've seen from this panel, there's a lot of different solutions and different projects going on, either with U.S. and Kazakhstan or in Kazakhstan, and the cooperation and the many different technologies and energy systems is going to be critical as we look forward into the future. I just wanted to thank all of our panelists again so much for joining us today. Really appreciate and really enjoyed this discussion. As I said in the beginning, it's just fascinating, everything that's happened in the past 20 and 30 years in Kazakhstan and with the US and Kazakhstan, and I see just incredible potential moving forward, and I'm happy to be a part of it with Chevron. It's been a fun ride, and I look forward to many years ahead. So thank you again. We're going to close this panel up, and I'm going to turn it over to Dina Shulk from IHS for the digital transformation panel. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, colleagues. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you.
All right, brilliant. Hi, Raphael. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Amy and colleagues, for that truly fascinating panel. My name is Dina Shulk. I am an Associate Director in Russian and Caspian Energy at IHS Markit. I'm delighted today to welcome a really fascinating and diverse group of panelists who will discuss digitization and various digital trends within Kazakhstan in particular. Digitization is obviously a very broad but important topic, and one that's gained incredible amount of importance during the pandemic. Broadly speaking, the broader adaptation of digital tools can increase efficiencies, streamline processes and supply chains, and also be leveraged as a mechanism or a tool for small businesses to enhance their market share and really grow. And I'm delighted to welcome a group of speakers from both the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan as well as the private sector to discuss some of these trends and what's been happening in recent years in Kazakhstan. And also, what do we think the outlook is for the future? We will have Ivan Bulayev, who is from Russian CIS General Manager from Amazon Web Services, Mikhail Amtadze, CEO and co-founder of Kaspi.kz, Mark David Hughes, who is Deputy Chairman of the Board of Kazpochta, Kazakhstan's National Postal Service, and last but most certainly not least, Rafael Tripka, who is Country Manager for MasterCard. But before that, we will be welcoming Vice Minister of Digital Development, Innovation, Aerospace Industry of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Oskar Serikovich Zhambakin. At this point, I would love to turn the floor over to Rafael Tripka from MasterCard, who will provide the introductory remarks for the Vice Minister. Rafael?
Thank you, Dana. Thank you all. I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Oskar Zhambakin, Vice Minister of Digital Development, Innovation, and Aerospace Industry of the Republic of Kazakhstan. And as we know, Mr. Zhambakin has a very extensive experience from National Bank of Kazakhstan, Development Bank, other commercial banks, and also other organizations, also including executive positions. Overall, looking at the country development, generally it is with people like Mr. Oskar Zhambakin, his team, and other market partners, also like companies present during this panel, that we can build the most successful and smart ecosystem with the fastest cashless growing payments in Kazakhstan, and then not only, also in the neighboring countries. So, dear Vice Minister, very warm welcome to the panel.
Good evening, good day, dear forum participants. I'm happy to attend the forum. On behalf of the Minister, I'd like to welcome all of you and say excuse on his behalf, because due to some unexpected circumstances, he could not attend the forum. So it's our pleasure to briefly describe what we have so far achieved So we have done well in e-government. We have built a robust telecoms infrastructure. We are in the top 30 in UN e-government index, but we are not stopping on that, and now we are working on developing the new strategy, the new national project. We have called it Digital Era Lifestyle, and the biggest focus is on our citizens and on data. So we have main pillars as services in 5 minutes, which are to be provided to our citizens, IT export and IT investments, where US companies can participate, and we will happily welcome big techs, and we will be building cloud infrastructure and invest more into broadband to allow trans-Asian, trans-Eurasian data exchange. The next part is information security and human capital. So these are the main areas we are working now, and we know that the data is the main source of the digital economy, and our main target is to build a really data-driven government. At the moment, we are transforming the statistics, transforming the data gathering processes so that the government will be able to forecast, to make scenarios in order to address the challenges and address the gaps we have. So our focus is on building sectoral platforms, agricultural, industrial, and so on. As noted, we are very interested in building infrastructure within the Kazakhstan. We are open for different public-private partnership options and other models. And I would like to pass the word to the next speaker.
Thank you, Vice Minister Oskar Sarikovic. Your comments certainly on scenario building and sectoral specific platforms are very timely and relevant, and I'm sure that we'll look forward to really interesting developments in the coming years. As an analyst myself, those buzzwords are always well appreciated, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the work that comes out of that. Next, I'd like to turn to Mr. Ivan Bulayev, who is Russia and CIS General Manager at Amazon Web Services. Many of you are certainly familiar with Amazon, and Amazon Web Services certainly is a large portfolio. I remember at Zero Week this past year, your CEO, Andy, was talking about how Amazon Web Services had a lot of applications in data management for upstream oil and gas, but also Amazon Web Service has a huge portfolio in terms of training and working with local businesses, and also improving supply chains and logistics. So Ivan, welcome. And let me sort of kick off with a question and hear your remarks. How do you see Amazon and Amazon Web Services specifically within the Republic of Kazakhstan supporting digital transformation and economic development? You're on mute, Ivan. Ivan, you're still on mute.
I don't think so.
No,
can you hear me now?
Yes, I apologize for that.
Okay, perfect. So first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, even though virtually for now, but hopefully in the future, we will have an opportunity to meet in person as well. So Dina, as you rightly said, there is a lot of things AWS does globally to help the customers all around the world. But talking more specifically about what our team does for Kazakhstan, I would first like to touch base on the digital export. So, and that's what is the cornerstone of what we do with our team. So what does it mean specifically? So we help our customers from the region to go global with AWS and to export their presence and to become global companies. So among the companies like that, we have software developers like EPAM, game studios like PlayRigs or Wargaming, independent software vendors like JetBrains or Beam, and also startups like Arrival or Flow Health. All these companies have become global together with AWS. So thanks to the global availability of the services, obviously AWS is available in many geographical regions, North and South America, Europe, China, Asia, also Africa and Middle East. And the second point here is that to launch a business on AWS, it's actually, the cost is lower and it's easier. And the second, which many people forget about, is that it's very easy to adapt your business model, because not every business idea becomes successful, and that's what cloud is about. And we have created a team. This part of it is dedicated to Kazakhstan that does exactly that. And I know Kazakhstan is very big about financial services. You have many companies who have become very successful, and there are several FSIs from Central Eurasia. I cannot name them right now, but they have received financial licenses in Europe, in the European Union, because they decided to build on AWS. So that makes it easier to get that kind of regulatory support from the government. And finally, among the cases, we have a company you're all well familiar with. So it's Astana International Exchange, almost 100% built on AWS. And they basically bring in international investors and which buy Kazakh shares afterwards. We have a public case study on our website about that. The second point is that we really play in the long term. So that's what AWS and Amazon is about. We have launched AWS Academy. It's a program which is focused on students, both technical and business specialties related to IT and cloud computing. And 8 universities out of Kazakhstan are accepted in the program. And today, the first of them, the University of Informational Technologies of Almaty, is available on the website. We have been working on this together with the support of the Minister Musin together. He has been very, very supportive, and just wanted to say thank you on that. We also are working with startups in Kazakhstan. So Astana Hub and Astana Financial Center FinTech Hub are both available in Activate program, which basically means they can support local startups with giving them financial support to build infrastructure, as well as Enterprise Connections program, which is matchmaking between enterprises, global companies in the US or Europe, and the local startups if the technology is a match. And finally, on the 24th of May, Amazon Retail became available for Kazakh sellers. So that's not AWS, that's Amazon.com, the e-commerce platform. So it's possible to apply Kazakh-issued, Kazakhstan-issued credit cards, receive money for the transactions, and Kaspi Gold, for example, is one of the popular systems is available there. So that's a short summary of what we do very specifically.
Thank you. I think sort of the 2 key takeaways from just your initial remarks were first, adaptability and scalability, the fact that your systems are highly flexible and can easily change and scale, which is so important in this rapid digital age. And also the breadth of your enterprise's activities that you deal with AIX and financial services, but also dealing with what we would call in the States your mom and pop sort of shops and entrepreneurships. I mean, I think that that's really sort of the backbone of economic growth, that infrastructure, if you will. So that's excellent to hear. And then, so we've learned about sort of the bread and butter of what Amazon Web Service does in the region, but I was hoping you could tell us sort of what are the specific things Amazon Web Service does to improve the reliability of its services in Kazakhstan?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great summary and also a great question on the reliability of services. So first and foremost, so we are constantly working on improving the infrastructure. So we work together with, I believe, the main operator of external channels, it's Kazakh Telecom, to improve the quality of the service delivery to Kazakhstan. So, and we have created and organized direct peering. so with Kazakh Telecom at the end of the last year, and it now works in every large city of Kazakhstan. Very specifically, that means that users, like citizens of Kazakhstan, will be able to get content from companies like Netflix or Zoom, which we are using now, and also Epic Games, Activision, PlayRix, Beam, and many others faster. So we have done some measurements, and according to some of the studies, it's about 30% of improvement. So it's big. I have noticed that the CIO of the Kazakh Telecom, so Nurlan Miermanov, noted that this overall makes an impact on the quality of internet in Kazakhstan. So we are not stopping here. So we are doing a very similar project to further improve this with another large telecom operator. So I cannot name right now, but hopefully I will be able to do that so. And then lastly, there is a possibility to do direct connect, which is a direct line basically between enterprise in Kazakhstan for telcos like Kazakh Telecom or Beeline, for large enterprises that are in the journey of building their hybrid cloud. We see the importance of this market. So as AWS, we have created a team which works with customers, but also supports the technical parts of things here. So, and it's dedicated to the market. And we're constantly looking, so sort of beyond the horizon. So what are the new opportunities to make more and to go above and beyond for our customers and partners in Kazakhstan?
Ivan, thank you. That was really interesting to learn, especially about the 30% efficiency improvements, and those concrete sort of actionable items are really tangible and excellent to see. We look forward to seeing what comes in the future of your existing programs and work into the future, as you said. So thank you. At this point, I would like to transition to Mr. Mikhail Lomtadze of Kaspi. Mikhail is the CEO and co-founder of Kaspi and one of the partners you had cited in your work as working with Amazon. For several of you who don't know, Kaspi.kz is one of the leading banks and financial providers in Kazakhstan and also has a very broad and diverse portfolio of activity. So Mikhail, welcome. And I would ask you if you could sort of share a bit about what Kaspi does for our colleagues on the line who aren't as familiar with your company. And also, how is Kaspi driving digital transformation in Kazakhstan?
Sure. Thanks, Dina, for an interesting intro. I mean, I would make one correction that actually we're much bigger than just a financial institution, even though we started as financial institution. So if you think about some of the things and the products and the services that Kaspi is providing, pretty much every single of those services is actually aimed at digitalizing the life of our users and making their life easier and simpler. And since we are the front runner of digitalization, because our super app has 10 million users monthly, which is over half of the country's population and probably one of the most successful examples of the super app strategy, alongside with Asian, big technology companies. As we're front runner, we basically digitalize every aspect of the user's life. But one of the numbers, or just to basically just tell you the scale of the country's digitalization, is that the digital payments, the mobile payments, cashless transactions, this we believe is the most important aspect of digitalizing the life of both country, people, and the businesses. And the digital cashless mobile transactions during 2020 were about 35 trillion tenge for convenience of everyone, roughly about $84 billion. And the growth rate of that digital transactions growth has been one of the highest in the world, about 160%. I mean, 160% growth on the digital payments in the country with such a base is already remarkable. I don't know any other country that would grow so fast. Just to put that number in perspective, the GDP of the country is around a bit over $170 billion. So the digital transactions that have been done in the country is almost half of its GDP and growing in 160% a year. If you compare growth of Kazakhstan to Russia, Russia has grown only about 23-24% last year. So the country is already increasingly digitalized. A lot of people have their basic lives in the smartphone, in our app, but other apps too. But what is most important, actually, how the digital transactions and the transactions when people are shopping, paying, moving the money, is actually have entered every aspect of the people's lives. And this is pretty remarkable. I think that if Harvard Business School will be writing the case, they should write the case about digital transformation of the country. It has happened just within the last 3-4 years. It's a remarkable achievement.
Excellent, thank you. I apologize for not correctly capturing your diverse group.
You're not the only one.
Well, thank you for educating us on that. I've lived in Kazakhstan the past 4 years, and I always thought of them as financial services. So I'm glad to learn more. But one of the items you kept citing in your initial remarks is on the super strategy. And obviously that strategy is working because you received 160% growth in 2020. So if you could sort of specify more exactly what exactly is the super strategy and what are the key elements to its success within Kazakhstan?
Sure. Well, I mean, the super app strategy is something which is actually quite unique to Kazakhstan as an app which has all the multiple services in a single app around the user lives. This concept has been implemented in some of the Asian super apps, and now PayPal, Amazon, and a bunch of other companies globally talking about the super app. However, Kazakhstan is one of the few countries in the world when the super app strategy has been successfully implemented, when actually not just the super app, everybody talks about the super app, but what is super app in case of Kazakhstan is actually have everything from your personal finance to e-commerce with delivery to mobile payments, QR payments, airline tickets, train tickets. You can select a store and go in and find it on the map and go in and buy in that store. So actually everything around shopping, payments, travel is in a single app. And that's an extremely important part of our strategy. That's why, the Kaspi as the company has been able to deliver the most value to its users. The mission of our company is to develop the innovative products that improve people's lives. And innovation in our case means leverage technology and the designing the customer experience. And because our goal is to improve people's lives, every single product that we have launched is actually extremely successful and the market leading. We also are doing as a part of a super app strategy together with the government, with the state, with Ministry of Digitalization. I mean, we're digitalizing some of the services which in some other countries do not exist. I mean, things like, were launched from the last quarter of last year, and then through this year, individual entrepreneurs or sole proprietorships can register fully online without visiting any government entities or service centers. You can register the car fully online when you buy it, so everything is in a super app. Of course, you can pay taxes, fully integrated experience through the app. Now we have launched the COVID functionality when you can actually check, the status of the COVID contact and whether you can, knowing that you can allow businesses to accept you in their premises. So there are a lot of services which we're constantly digitalizing around the lives of our users. And we love the stories, you know, when some of our customers are on a vacation somewhere in other country, and they proudly say that things they do in Kazakhstan in Kaspi KZ Super App does not exist in other countries. So actually the making people, our users, and the country proud with our innovations has been an extremely important part of our strategy. And we truly believe that, you know, innovation pace in Kazakhstan is enormous. Kaspi plays a significant portion of that, but we're also educating users, we're educating engineers, data scientists, we have Kaspi Labs. So we educate competition, everybody wants to copy our services. So it's all great. I mean, Kazakhstan is clearly an incredible transformation during the last 3-4 years.
Thank you, Mikhail. That was all very fascinating and really interesting. And I have in my mind 20 more questions I could ask you, but I want to be conscious of time and get on to some of our other speakers before we move on. But thank you, that was interesting. And I think the key sort of takeaways I will leave from this is 160% growth rate and $84 billion in digital payments out of $170 billion sort of economy. I think out of anything, those are really impressive numbers, and the proof is in the pudding. So we look forward to seeing what the super strategy brings next. Thank you. From now that we've heard from Amazon Web Services, which is sort of a very diverse platform, and Mikhail on Kaspi's extremely diverse and impressive book of business, I want to turn to Mark David Hughes of Kazpochta. Mr. Hughes has enormous experience in logistics, supply chains, various services related to that, and Kazpochta is obviously a key player in providing services to the citizens of Kazakhstan. So Mr. Hughes, thank you for joining us today. And wanted to sort of start out hearing about what Kazpochta has been doing in some of your digital efforts, and what are your plans in the future in terms of digital transformations?
Thank you very much, Dina, for the introduction. Good evening, Vice Minister. Good morning to our partners and friends in the States, and obviously good evening to our friends here in Kazakhstan. First of all, in terms of digital transformation, I can say that Kazpochta is on quite an incredible journey, but also quite a fast journey. If we look at traditionally, our business would normally have been the delivery of postal items, which is mail, newspapers. Traditional postal items are obviously, the volumes are dropping, and people are moving towards online shopping, which means a massive increase in the kind of volume of material that we move, parcels, and even larger items. If we just look at that transformation over the past year and a half, I would say that online shopping, particularly driven by partners such as Kaspi, Amazon, and so on, I've seen a major change in, let's say, the lifestyle of our customers here in Kazakhstan. People are now buying online. Their expectation is that the goods should be delivered pretty fast right across the whole of the country. And so traditionally, we might have focused on logistics being the physical movement of the goods across the country. But at the same time, we also have to focus on the digital aspect of that, which is making sure that the information flow is also there. So that's everything from making sure that customers can track and trace their items, right through to simple things like, can they go onto the website and rearrange the delivery for a different address? Can they buy services from us, and so on? So I'd say that in the past year and a half, we've been on quite an incredible journey. We're focusing very much on digital transformation as a platform really to improve productivity, to improve quality, which is what our customers obviously see across the country, and really as a way of supporting the growth for e-commerce, which we see as our key driver of our business moving forward in the coming years. In terms of actual sort of key initiatives, we've got our own website, which we call Post KZ, and we're now inviting marketplaces from Kazakhstan to actually partner with us to actually be part of that, part of our website, so that we can actually use our customer base to drive additional business for our partners which obviously then translates into, we hope, additional volumes in our network. We've got some interesting initiatives such as what we call EN at Post KZ, which is very much an electronic mailbox which we're developing, which is a mailbox which would allow customers to receive mail, particularly in terms of, let's say, government communications and so on, addressed to their EN number. I think in the States that would be normally referred to as like a social security number. So that's kind of a move away from physical post to electronic mail. We've, in the past year, developed our own application which our postal workers use, our delivery couriers use when delivering postal items, and making sure that obviously the information in terms of when and where the item was delivered is relayed back to the senders. That application also is useful for receiving payment, either if it's a cash on delivery or for additional services and so on. So very much focusing on, let's say, improving our own infrastructure, which traditionally was a bricks and mortar infrastructure, and adding on a layer of digital infrastructure, which then makes sure that we really support e-commerce businesses, first of all, within the country, but also the development of e-commerce cross-border, which is also quite an interesting and a very important part of our business as KazPost. We're growing rather fast in domestic delivery for e-commerce, about 30% last year, but we're also seeing great development in terms of cross-border. First of all, traditionally inbound, because Kazakhstan tends to be an inbound country when we're looking at cross-border purchasing, particularly from countries like China, but also from Europe and the States. But we've also quite interestingly seen an upswing in terms of volumes for outbound, which I think is directly connected with the development of small and medium-sized customers who are starting to sell goods made in Kazakhstan on the international platforms such as Amazon, eBay, and so on. And it's nice to see that there are development of volumes in those areas as well. So yeah, in terms of digital transformation, we're definitely on a very fast track there. And it's basically in order to support the growth of e-commerce within the country and also cross-border.
Thank you. Before I get to my next question, just a personal anecdote. It was winter 2019, and we were sending out well over 100 holiday cards, and we thought that we would have to go to KazPost to actually register them all online. And it turns out, register them all in person. It turns out we were able to do it all online. We sent out on Monday, and by Wednesday, they had all been arrived. So I would say, in addition to all those components you mentioned, just from my own sort of operational experience within Kazakhstan, we have used some of your digital platforms, and they were very efficient and worked. So that's more on the bread and butter part of your business. But even in 2019, we were able to leverage some of those tools. So thank you.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. That's a hybrid mail product, where you send an electronic version and then we convert that into paper and then send it as an envelope to the consignee. It's actually quite fast and very efficient. Yeah.
And we were able to put in all the addresses online in your system and not have to go there. And we were just able to go and drop it off. They looked it up on the system. And so even for something as simple as that, just as a smaller business or smaller office on the ground, we were able to use that tool. So that was helpful also. So thank you. You had mentioned also about outbound and inbound goods, partnering with other mail providers. And I believe that KazPochta and UPS will be working together more broadly in the future. And I was hoping you could share a bit more about what are the current plans and what is your vision for cooperation with UPS?
Yeah, thanks very much for support, obviously, from KAZ INVEST and also the Kazakhstan Embassy in the States. We've initiated some quite interesting, let's say, potential areas for collaboration with the UPS. And I think actually the collaboration is it could definitely support, obviously, inbound e-com growth, but also outbound as well. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. We're looking at developing with UPS a solution which would use their infrastructure in the States for pickup of internet shopping, which Kazakhstan customers buy from the States and then want to ship to Kazakhstan. Kazakhstanis are pretty avid shoppers. They obviously have a very good array and, let's say, availability of products within the domestic market, but also shoppers look abroad to Europe and the States for items, specialist items, which they can't necessarily buy locally. We've got a plan basically to open up, as KazPost, a representation office stroke warehouse in the States. We call it in the technical terms ETOE, which means basically we have our own representation in the States. Kazakhstan shoppers would then be able to buy from various shopping platforms in America, deliver to that warehouse, and then we consolidate and send the shipments from the States over to Kazakhstan, basically allowing or ensuring that we have fast transit times and as cheap a service as possible for our customers here. And I think probably here we see an immediate benefit of collaborating with UPS, because we can use them for what we call the first mile, which is their pickup infrastructure in the States, which covers obviously the whole country. So first mile pickup and then delivery to our warehouse in the States for onward shipping here. So I think that's a good first, let's say, stop in terms of collaboration. In terms of business, I always like to partner with companies where we give them business and they give us business. So we've also been talking to UPS in terms of collaboration within the territory of Kazakhstan. So obviously here in Kazakhstan, we've got an amazingly large network, 3,200 post office branches across the country. We've got over 5,000 staff that are involved in the daily delivery of either post or parcels. And it's clear that UPS, being a global provider, needs a strong partner within Kazakhstan. And I think we're going to be talking to them in depth about how we can use our network to help them deliver inbound material to locations where they're not physically present themselves. So I think that's going to be quite exciting. I talked earlier a little bit about how we've seen a growth in export volumes, particularly SMEs and small and medium companies to Europe, the States and so on. And I think that it's clear that there is a development in that area. There's quite a lot of focus in terms of government support also to help smaller exporters. We have, in fact, over the past couple of years, created something called a Shkola Exporta, which is like an export school to help small and medium-sized companies understand how to export their goods and arrange, let's say, the administrative processes quite easily. And so therefore we're very keen on assisting small, medium-sized companies export. And we will be looking at potentially creating something like a co-branded product with UPS, which is focused very much on outbound, which means that a customer in Kazakhstan who has volumes, let's say, to Europe or the States, would ship through ourselves, but has the choice to either use KazPost, who then partners with the US Postal Service, or Deutsche Post, or China Post, or wherever the destination postal operator will be, or as an alternative to use a co-branded product, which means that we then pass that final mile delivery to UPS, and they do it using their network. And I think this is all about offering customers greater flexibility and a greater choice so that they can choose what's best for them in terms of coverage, price, brand, and so on. So I think that there are three quite interesting initiatives that we have with UPS being the global player. And the fourth and final initiative, which I'm very excited about, is we're now developing an infrastructure on the border with China, so between China and Kazakhstan, at a place called Khargos. We've built or have developed a bonded warehouse on the free economic zone there. And the bonded warehouse is very much focused on receiving inbound freight shipments from China, which we then process and turn into postal or mail shipments for onward shipment, either within Kazakhstan, to other countries of Central Asia, Russia, Europe, and in fact, further afield. And this is quite an exciting infrastructure because it means that senders in Asia are able to actually reduce what we call the first mile timing, which is the transit in China, we're able to then convert to post and then distribute much more efficiently across the rest of the world. And I think we'll be talking quite closely to UPS about that option as well, because we see a lot of interest in terms of transit using the channel between China and the rest of the world, which obviously goes through Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, as we all know, is basically on the fastest route from Asia to Europe. It's the fastest and cheapest route, and we're very happy that we've actually created a bonded facility on that route, which will support the development or the further development of cross-border e-commerce. So some quite exciting initiatives that we're going to turn into concrete business along with our partners in UPS.
Thank you, Mark. Fascinating stuff, and I have 100 questions on logistics and airplanes and customs and processing, but that's for another day. But if I could just ask one quick follow-up. When you're talking about outbound, sort of, because we have the time, when you're talking about outbound goods, could you just at a high level describe what sort of goods are Kazakh small and medium businesses exporting? Is it consumables, perishables? What sort of products are you seeing Kazakh enterprises selling overseas at a high level, obviously?
There's quite a mix because, as I said before, it tends to be small and medium-sized operators. And it could be everything from food items such as things like honey and so on, right through to handmade goods, which obviously there is a market for such items in the States and Europe. So quite an array. But I would say that in general it tends to be specialty items. And I did mention honey because that is actually quite a big seller, but also handmade items which have a market in Europe and the States.
Certainly. Very interesting and very cool stuff. And we look forward to sort of seeing what's next with you as well. Finally, now that we've gone through Amazon Web Service, Kaspi, and Kazpoch, I think we've covered a variety of digital payments and services and a lot of components related to that. But I would like to bring into the conversation Rafael Trepka, who is country manager for MasterCard. And MasterCard, as many of you know, is sort of involved with payments and processing of those. And it would be interesting, Rafael, to sort of hear your thoughts on how is MasterCard's activity in Kazakhstan, and more specifically, how has MasterCard embraced the pandemic and digitization trends within the country?
Dana, welcome. Thank you for the invitation. As well, thank you for the question, and good evening, good day to everyone. As you mentioned about the pandemic and from the perspective of MasterCard, so let's say, go back a few months from the perspective of the pandemic. And if I look at the logo of MasterCard and intersecting circles, let me divide it into like 3 key areas. So from one side is the issuing side, on the other side is the acquiring, so the possibility to accept payments, and then everything, let's say, underlined with the digital transformation, with the digital technology in this case. So we have heard already about different developments from the digital payments. I will speak about, let's say, overall about the markets, about the different developments on the banks. So if I look at the issuing side, not in Kazakhstan, not all the banks have been fully developed from the, for example, remote processes, with the different processes, with the different digital processes. So the first part, which we've been working with our partners, different banks on the market, how to issue, how to provide the cards remotely to the customers. Or maybe the other part, how to develop the mobile banking, because before it was not there. Some of the banks have been better developed, some of them less. And if somebody hasn't been doing that before, they have to certainly speed up the whole process. So therefore, we have called the whole process of, let's say, digital first. Maybe it was a virtual first, maybe digital first. So in the past, people were getting the plastic card as a first one, and later on they could tokenize it, they could get it in the virtual version. During the pandemic, it was rather vice versa. So it was a very quick virtual delivery with the mobile wallet, with any other version. And later on, it was a, let's say, plastic card delivery. So the process has been, let's say, a bit reversed. We even had to go to such a basic areas like card expiration. Because, for example, during the pandemic, people could not easily go to the branch, pick up the card, renew their card. So we've been working from the safety security perspective that people could even use the card after the expiration. As the other example, there were different disbursement programs in the market. So in this case, how people can easily receive the payments on the card, on the wallets. So in this case, they don't have to go stand somewhere in the queue, but go and immediately receive this payment. So just a few examples, as I'm saying, all, let's say, remote servicing, this digital first, disbursements. So different areas from the issuing perspective. So that's certainly the one area. Then if I move towards the accepting, I think a lot of people have realized that cash may not be so clean. I would say we have even heard a lot of stories that cash is dirty. So therefore, I mean, there were a lot of, even, finally somebody noticed this hygienic factor as well. And a lot of, we have heard as well, like how the payments have been moving towards the electronic payments and also towards the online payments. We've been working a lot on the contactless transactions. So in this case, let's say tapping the phone or tapping the card became much more convenient. And for example, as well, at the beginning, we've been increasing the contactless limits being set up together with our partners, acquirers, and merchants. So again, it's much more convenient, it's faster, it's safer, it's more hygienic for people to pay. So on the acquiring side, certainly the contactless payments is something which have been really evolving. Moreover, on the acceptance side, a lot of companies haven't been, for example, haven't been selling in the e-commerce. So there was a whole movement of the entities which were so far only selling face-to-face. In face-to-face, if they had to close, there was no option. They could not sell, so they had to go towards the e-commerce, towards the online sale, and that's what we've been also working together with our partners. And then different parts, because of course you can buy in so-called a guest checkout, but if you're buying more often, and people, for example, were buying food every day or every second day, then it was much easier, for example, to leave your cards in the safe and secure way on the platform. So as you say, leave your, let's say, credentials on file. And a lot of education related to that, a lot of technology. Maybe one more thing to mention on the acceptance side as well. People realize that it's actually easier to maybe turn your mobile into acceptance device. So therefore, we've been also developing the technology, call it software POS or tap on phone, that where in this case, the SMEs can actually download additional application and can start accepting the payments as well in the contact as well. So the secondary acceptance is also very, very important during the whole pandemic, and a lot of things are going to stay. And last but not least, to also mention is the whole, I already mentioned a lot of digital part as well, but moving e-commerce, moving online, moving to the electronic payments, it was mentioned, it is super useful from the user experience, but we also have to, and our role as MasterCard from this flow of transactions is also to make everything safe and secure. So we've been spending a lot of time, a lot of efforts on the safety and security, the whole fraud prevention as well, the risk monitoring, and these are the areas which are super critical to secure both on the issuing side and also on the acquiring side. That we monitor what is going on, and then we can also secure it. And maybe the last to mention as an example is we also realize that people cannot move so often. So, and then, for example, cross-border transactions do not only happen when you travel, but it can happen from the comfort of your own home, because it was mentioned, for example, you can buy in China, you can buy in other places, you can buy the entertainment, and you don't really have to travel. It's not only about the hotel, it's not only about the restaurants in the foreign places. People buy different things abroad. So in this case, actually this cross-border e-commerce was also very popular, and not only cross-border e-commerce, but also, for example, sending money or receiving some remittances, because maybe some part of the family is in another country. So what's the easier way I can transfer money? And actually that's both domestically, maybe top up some wallets, transfer money, and also transfer cross-border. So this would be, let's say, the three key areas I would mention, which are from the scope of MasterCard. As we look from one side, it's the issuing, from the other one, it's the acquiring, and then supported by the whole digital layer. Let me pause here and people hear our question.
Thank you. I would say, sort of listening to your remarks after hearing from Amazon Web Service, Caspian, Kazpochta provides sort of an interesting spectrum of how the various components of the value chain or business supply chain really work together to allow sort of this, not new, but digital infrastructure and digital marketplace to really function well, safely and reliably. And that's really an important trend. And so now that we've sort of discussed your three key areas during this past year and a half, sort of a longer term, and having listened to the other players on this panel, what do you see next for MasterCard in Kazakhstan? What are some, or more broadly, what are some of the post-pandemic trends you're expecting?
As we said, we look what happened so far, looking for the future. Let's say user experience have been mentioned a few times today. So I would say certainly from the consumer perspective on the user experience, I would say that's again the first key area I would mention. The other maybe I will touch base as well on the infrastructure, and also from Vice Minister, we have heard about data, and the data part we will capture as well. So on the consumer side, we see how people are buying and how often they are buying. So let's say different type of the subscriptions, because we can have our favorite merchant, our favorite shop. And I mean, in the future, it's almost like an invisible payment. So you go, you know that payment has happened, you have received your product, and you know at the end that actually the transaction has been, let's say, received or has been made in a very safe and secure way. So from user experience, it's super easy, but if you look from the technology which is behind this, it's much more complicated. But again, it's all securing this user experience. So this type of the invisible payments is super important. Also, when we look from the consumer perspective, the whole, we can call it shared economy, gig economy, because maybe you don't need anymore your own car or your own bike or your own scooter. It's, let's say, more you can rent it, especially when you are in the big cities. And hopefully also the whole mobility in the city will return, but maybe it will return in a bit of different way. Of course, the public transport will be super important, but people may be, let's say, isolating a bit for some time. So all this sharing is very important, and it can be very nicely linked with payments, because again, you have to pay, for example, your subscription for the scooter or for the bike rental or any other. And the other part from the user is what we see as well for the future. People became probably a bit more mindful. So people rather, let's say, also try to help. They are looking for the different charity options, for the eco options, for the sustainable development. So let's say this responsibility of the society became higher. So we see much more, let's say, this type of the sustainable program, very, let's say, responsible programs to develop as well, very often driven by the user. So user, I mean, it was mentioned, it's certainly the most super important, because at the end we do it for the customers. Our main customers are rather B2B customers. We deliver to the banks, we deliver to the acquirers, but I mean, we always have to think B2B to C in this. On the infrastructure side, again, a lot of this self-service. So for example, we go to the shop, but we buy ourselves. We don't need anybody else additionally to serve us. So the self-service is very important, and we see how retail is moving towards this way. Before we could talk about the e-commerce, now we maybe talk about the a-commerce. So it's more, let's say, automated commerce. So let's say almost like shop is buying on your behalf because it already knows what you've been buying before. Before you could talk something about the omni-channel, multi-channel. Right now it's a channelless. You enter with the mobile phone to the store, and how would you call it? So all these, let's say, channels are blurring, and our role as well is how to link it together as well. So that's on the infrastructure side. And last but not least, Vice Minister was also mentioning the data. So I would put the data, I will link it with with the safety and security, because that's the key, actually fundamental of MasterCard. So, how do we use and how we leverage the biometric? Again, very often biometric, your face recognition, fingerprint, for approving transaction, for authentication. This is super important. How do we recognize whether it's really you who is making transaction, not some kind of the bot? So as we could call it then in the payments, everything what is related with artificial intelligence as well. So this is how we, let's say, use the data to secure transactions, to make it smooth. But again, all of that is really linking towards the user experience. So again, these were the three areas I would mention.
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, colleagues. I think that we just touched the tip of the digitization iceberg, and we can discuss this a lot more across the board. But I think let me sort of synthesize everything we had heard today, and then we'll sort of move on to the next panel early. I think the key themes listening to everyone that comes out of this is first and foremost that we're hearing from 4 private or quasi-private companies, as well as the ministry, providing success case studies on digitization in Kazakhstan. To cite Mikhail, about $84 billion, or almost half of Kazakhstan's GDP, occurred through digital payments or technological payments, and the entire infrastructure that's come about within Kazakhstan to support that is really driven by an investment in both physical infrastructure, by whether it be MasterCard, Amazon Web Service, Kaspi, Kazpochta, and others, an investment in human capital development, in data scientists, software engineers, et cetera, and logistics and supply chains, and just an investment in resources in general in the country. So now that we're seeing 30% growth, 160% growth, or 30% improvement in web services, I think your comments all reflect the fact as we would say, sort of the fruits of your labor and the results of all of your various initiatives and investments. And as an analyst in the region, that's very, very satisfying to see. The last part I would say is that it sounds that there's a lot on the horizon, that we're really only starting the digitization transformation in Kazakhstan, and whether it be Kazpochta or Kaspi or Amazon Web Services, looks like that there will be a lot more to come in terms of the expansion of digital services, not just B2B, but also for small businesses. And that should be a real catalyst for Kazakhstan's economic development in the future. So at this point, I would like to thank all of our panelists, Mikhail, Mark, Ivan, Rafael, as well as the Vice Minister, Oskar Sarikovich, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Kazakh Invest, the Embassy of the Republic of Kazakhstan, and the U.S. Kazakh Business Council. So thank you very much, colleagues. And I would like to hand it over to Jennifer Meal at the U.S. Kazakh Business Council to introduce our next panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dina, and to all the participants of the Digitization Digital Transformation panel. This has been a fascinating discussion, and I think we're all a testament of Kazakhstan digitization today. This forum that we've had tremendous amount of participation from both governments and the private sector, about 20 private sector speakers and 20 government speakers. We've had more than 400 people viewing the event. So we really appreciate everyone's support for these last 2 days. This brings us to our closing session here, and we couldn't be happier to have the ambassadors of both nations here with us today. Ambassador Ashikbayev from Kazakhstan, and also Ambassador Moser from the United States, who's based in Kazakhstan. These perspectives that we'll hear in today's closing session, we have a brand new ambassador in Washington from Kazakhstan. This is his first ambassadorial post. He'll be giving us his vision for the relationship and how he sees it. And then also we have from Nur Sultan, Ambassador Moser, who's been in his role for more than 2 years and has some very insightful reflections to offer us on the future of the partnership. So we'll start with Ambassador Ashikbayev, who many of you know, both in his role as a new ambassador and also as in his previous role as Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, where he was the lead point person for the Americas and also United Nations. He led the Enhanced Strategic Partnership dialogue that was a government-to-government dialogue, and is very familiar with the United States and many of the companies that are doing business in Kazakhstan. As part of the U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council, already we've enjoyed a wonderful working relationship over the last couple months since he arrived in Washington in April. I know it's been difficult for him to have to engage in this virtual diplomacy, but he's been doing an excellent job and off to an amazing start. We look forward to his remarks today. And Ambassador, I'll turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about what your reflections are on the relationship, both in your previous role and how you see things moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. my pleasure and my honor to conclude this 2 days long discussions and congratulate everyone on making this inaugural Trade and Investment Forum a success. But before I go into the substance of my remarks, I wish to sincerely thank Susan Clark from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, Michael Wirth from Chevron, whose devoted and truthful engagement have prompted the establishment of Kazakhstan-U.S. Business Council and brought well-known dignitaries and business leaders together. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to our distinguished speakers at all the panels and moderators from different institutions, U.S. Department of State, Departments of State, Commerce, Energy, Agriculture, USTR, but also World Bank, UPS, Tyson Foods, and many other companies. On a separate note, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Atomic National Chamber of Commerce, MasterCard, and Coca-Cola HHX. And of course, I can help thanking our excellent co-hosts, Kush Choksi, Jennifer Miel, and their able team from U.S. Chamber of Commerce and our colleagues from Kazakh Invest. So dear friends, due to its size, geopolitical location, economic performances, innovative policies, and driven by political will of the first president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, Kazakhstan has become a respected and responsible member of the international community, and I would say a crucial net contributor to the global and regional agenda. President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev initiated a reformative agenda which focuses on advancing the human-centered listening state, on deep political transformation, economic diversification, improvement of investment climate, and stressing fair market rules and level playing field for all businesses. And thereby, this agenda greatly aligns with the US core values. President Tokayev introduced a substantial package of reforms reinforcing the human rights and fundamental freedoms in Kazakhstan and strengthening the dialogue between society and government. And his key principle is no economic growth without political development. And we firmly believe that this concept of a political system best meets the needs of our people and ensures our nation's stable and sustainable future. And on the background of new geopolitical and geoeconomic realities, Kazakhstan is fully committed to continue a robust dialogue with the US to maintain post-pandemic economic recovery through digital trade, supporting small and medium-sized enterprises, addressing the climate emergencies, promoting women economic empowerment, ensuring regional food security, and overall cooperating in many other areas of mutual interest. And as we mark a historic milestone, the 30th anniversary of our partnership, I believe we still have a vast potential to be unleashed. Beyond doubt, this 2 days discussion gave us a unique and incomparable opportunity to explore new avenues of cooperation in agribusiness, green energy, digital commerce, healthcare, education, finance and banking, and many other sectors. And I would like to stress the high-level participation of Kazakhstan government, which was represented within these 2 days by 6 cabinet members. And this, I believe, is a demonstration of our firm commitment to the multifaceted partnership with the United States. And it's also a testament to a great importance we attach to our economic relations with the United States and US companies. I firmly believe that valuable insights and views shared here, both by government officials and business leaders alike, will boost our commercial and investment flows, as well as scale up multi-dimensional cooperation. I can't help, you've mentioned, Jennifer, asked about my priorities, so I can't help mentioning one of the important, even though they're symbolic, but important areas, important issue that I would like to address, which is outdated Jackson-Vanik amendment to the US trade law. And I believe that Kazakhstan's graduation from the Jackson VanEck will allow us to establish a permanent normal trade relations in full compliance with our mutual WTO commitments. And I believe this will result in new jobs, tax revenues, and will also contribute to the development, both economic development, both in Kazakhstan and the United States. It's also my sincere hope that GSP program will be renewed by the US Congress soon, and Kazakhstan will stay in the list of beneficiaries, thus providing US consumers with higher variety of low-cost products. The embassy, in its turn, will be working on making sure it is reciprocal two-way dialogue. And we stand ready to provide every assistance in implementing joint projects and enhancing mutual engagement to help both Kazakh and US businesses succeed. As a like-minded state, we share the common values, values of fair trade, equal opportunities, rule of law, and win-win approach. And we believe that together we are capable of effectively addressing current challenges and delivering tangible results to our people. I thank all the participants and look forward to many more engagements, both online and in person, once the pandemic-related restrictions are lifted. And with this, I would like again to thank every participant, and I very much looking forward to my good friend, Ambassador Moser's remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ashikbayev. This was a great overview, and I couldn't agree more on some of the issues that you highlighted related to permanent normalized trade relations, PNTR, and also to GSP. These are both key facets of U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council's policy agenda, and one that we will be advocating for in the coming months. We appreciate again all your support for the commercial relationship, and especially for this conference and making it a success here today. We're now delighted to turn to Ambassador Moser, who's the U.S. Ambassador in Kazakhstan based in Nur Sultan. Ambassador Moser has been in his role since January 2019, so he'll offer some perspective over the last 2 years in his position. He's no stranger to the region, and he actually had served as Economic and Commercial Officer in a previous role and previous tour in Kazakhstan. So it must be great for him to see the full cycle of Kazakhstan's growth from a junior officer and now to the ambassador and highest diplomat in the country. Ambassador Moser is a native of North Carolina, and he's served in various roles in diplomacy throughout the world. He's also a very strong advocate for the Chamber's affiliate in Kazakhstan, AmCham in Kazakhstan, in the monthly meetings that they hold with the Prime Minister. So we really thank him for his support for the local business community and all U.S. companies that are engaged in Kazakhstan. Ambassador Moser, we turn it over to you.
Jennifer, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. And let me begin first by thanking the Kazakhstan Business Council and KAZAKH INVEST for hosting this important event. I would also like to thank Deputy Prime Minister Tleuberdi and Ambassador Bernakat for their keynote remarks during yesterday's program. This two-day Trade and Investment Forum has been a great success and has highlighted the incredible depth of commercial relations between the United States and Kazakhstan that have developed over the course of our 30-year relationship. The reason we celebrate is not just to look back at the past 30 years, but to look forward together. And that is why I'm so pleased to join my good friend, Ambassador Ashikbayev, today for the concluding remarks. For the past 3 decades, Kazakhstan has been a steadfast partner for the United States in Central Asia in many strategic areas, including security, public health, the environment, to name a few. But today, we gather to celebrate our economic partnership, one that began with the development of Kazakhstan's rich energy resources and has since evolved to include investments touching important sectors like healthcare, information technologies, consumer goods, and transportation. These investments in Kazakhstan by American companies have created hundreds of thousands of jobs, provided the government with an important source of tax revenue, transferred important technology and know-how to the workforce, and improved the standard of living. Today, the investment climate in Kazakhstan is characterized by both opportunity as well as challenges. As it continues to work to recover from the economic losses due to the pandemic, the government of Kazakhstan sees that it has an opportunity to renew its efforts to attract foreign capital to stimulate economic development. In our view, agriculture, alternative energy, food processing, information technology, logistics, and tourism are all sectors that can be new economic drivers for the country. And U.S. companies have not only the technology and know-how to enable this transformation, but the long-term commitment to the market Kazakhstan needs to take its economy to the next level. By way of example, the recent announcement by Nebraska-based Valmont Industries to conduct a pivot irrigation manufacturing facility in southern Kazakhstan is fantastic news for the development of the agriculture industry. So is the interest by companies like Tyson's Foods in the meat processing industry. We see enormous potential in virtually every segment of Kazakhstan's agricultural sector, and American firms are well positioned to take advantage of these opportunities. But like any market, there are obstacles to doing business here. However, I truly believe that there is great cause for optimism over the long term. The Kazakhstani government, as this conference has really shown, has shown a great willingness to engage in dialogue and has created several established mechanisms to facilitate exchange with the private sector. American firms have taken advantage of these opportunities to not only solve problems facing their business and investments, but to inform the government on critical areas impacting the long-term health of the investment climate. American companies have a great deal to offer Kazakhstan, and the U.S. government stands ready to support them with financing through agencies like the Exim Bank and the International Development Finance Corporation. In addition, our missions, economic and commercial teams are working hard to identify prospective business and investment opportunities. So I hope you will avail yourselves to their support as you look to expand your presence in the market. I look forward to working with all of you in the days, months, and years ahead to forge a new chapter in our 30-year economic partnership, and I look forward to the next 30 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Moser, for those kind remarks. And indeed, this has been one of the central themes for this conference. We're celebrating the last 30 years, but we're looking forward to the next 30 years. And we've heard from so many amazing speakers and insights around different sectors that will help diversify Kazakhstan's economy, drawing upon innovation, ingenuity, and the private sector expertise of the United States in coordination with Kazakhstan's state-owned companies and also private sector, and really enabled by a lot of these policy reforms that are underway, really buttressed by this strong dialogue between Kazakhstan's government and the private sector. So with that, we just want to recap some of the highlights from the conference and some of these sectors that we see a lot of diversification happening in. Agriculture is definitely one of them, as the ambassador mentioned, with Valmont's new deal that they've signed with Kazakhstan and Kazakhstan partners, Kusto Group, who we had here yesterday. And a lot of the comments we heard from speakers about Kazakhstan serving as the breadbasket for the region and potentially for the world. This is one that U.S. companies are dedicated to seeing realized, and we thank the Kazakhstan government for their support. Energy and mining is another great sector that we heard from today. Kazakhstan having, I think, 98 elements on the periodic table that are found in the country, and a huge source for U.S. companies looking to diversify energy and help with carbon capture storage, in addition to being a leader in the globe in hydrocarbons. So a great sector for us to continue to engage on. Also, we heard from companies in digitization today and the tremendous success story that Kazakhstan is becoming as the population continues to digitize in every form and fashion. So these are just some of the points that we look to follow up on as U.S. Kazakhstan Business Council, together with our partners, the Embassy of Kazakhstan and KAZAKH INVEST. And as we look to next steps, definitely count on our council to continue to be active, engaging companies and speakers that were here today. In the future, when we can travel and visit Kazakhstan, we look to bring another business mission to follow up on the business mission that the former Secretary of Commerce had led in the last year or so. So with that, again, I want to wholeheartedly thank our speakers, our participants, companies, government co-hosts, our sponsors, Atomican, MasterCard, and Coca-Cola. And we want to continue these conversations. We'll post these videos online. We encourage you to share them and review some of the sector opportunities that you heard. And of course, to contact us if we can be of any support to facilitate further business opportunities between our two countries. So with that, again, I want to thank everyone for their participation, support, and contributions to the valuable event that we held over the last 2 days, and join us in celebrating these 30 years of commercial diplomacy between U.S. and Kazakhstan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Ambassador.
Yes, thank you very much.